I think that's the real debate happening among the elite right now. We need to encourage everyone to have kids. Obviously, we want to have kids because things are good for us. And when things are good for you, of course you want to continue that. So, of course, we want to have kids, but we need to encourage the bottom strung to have kids so we at least have people who can do the stuff that we don't want our kids doing so they can live luxurious lives. Or, and then you have the other side of the debate, I think, going on among the elites, that's going, well, we don't need to worry about that because we'll just have robots and AI to take care of all the unsavory work, and so our kids can live in luxury and we don't have to support an underclass of people.
Hello, everybody. You're watching an episode of Drunken Wisdom, and today we're talking about anti-natalism.
Based or cringe?
I don't know the answer.
Yeah, so we were talking a bit about this, and I want to disclaimer. I want to preface this whole thing with one. The title is intentionally inflammatory, but we're going somewhere with this. There's an idea there, at least a seed of an idea.
Yeah.
And two, my actual thoughts, like my unironic actual thoughts on anti-natalism or pro-natalism, both, whatever, is I think it's a faulty thing to argue about because it's trying to rationalize the irrational. Wanting to have kids is fundamentally an irrational thing, the same way that loving somebody. I mean, obviously, since, if you have kids, you should love them, and you should love the spouse of your wife that you have the kids with. Love itself is irrational, so to try to rationalize decisions made based off of love, I think, is just not going to go anywhere productive. So that's like my actual thoughts on the issue, but...
Yeah, I mean, the thing with anti-natalism, pronatalism, I didn't even know this is an argument until on my Discord a couple of months ago when somebody kept saying, like, you shouldn't have kids, it's immoral to have kids, how dare you have kids, you're an evil human being. And, like, you can usually tell when somebody is using some form of sophistry, when your gut is like, there's just something bad faith about the way this person is going about their argument. And I was never like, you need to have kids. I just felt like, okay, well, I'll probably have them at some point in my life, but considering all the things going on in the world, I'm not entirely sure. And it was never rational. I mean, like, my parents were like, you should give us some grandkids, son. I can't wait to see that granddaughter, grandson sometime soon, so I can spoil them to death. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, should have done that while I was young, But there's never really anything profound about it, and then. Just confuses me.
There's a big debate online.
Yeah,
like a lot of people argue about it, and as probably the topic of the video says, I think both sides are psy-ops, or rather, maybe saying I think is a strong word. I think there's reason to suspect. Let's just keep it that way. Let's keep it nice and vague like that. There are reasons to suspect that there are psy-ops going on both sides of this argument.
What the fuck are you talking? I don't know what you're talking. First, you're gonna have to explain to me, like, what do you mean by, like, psy-op? Like a government operation?
Like a psychological operation. By the government or some other organization. Let's just, again, I said suspect, and I'm using that very loosely, and I'm not talking, and non-directionally. I don't know who to blame. I'm just saying it feels like there are certain people who are very invested in this argument, and theoretically they may have financial incentives in this too, but there are people who are really invested in this argument, and they're putting out a lot of stuff online to try to get people to encourage this dialogue.
Right. And
so it just feels like there's something fishy. Why are people talking so much about this? And so I wanted to start, I'm going to tackle both sides. So I'm going to tackle why I think the pro-natalist side is potentially a psy-op, but I'm also going to tackle why the anti-natalist side is potentially a psy-op. But I'm going to start with the pro-natalist side because actually my theory behind it, the two kind of connect.
Yeah.
So why do I think we should be a little bit suspicious of the pro-natalist side? I really started thinking about this when there's this guy, God, I should have looked this up before we recorded this, but there's this guy who's like known, he's gotten known recently for being a very pro-natalist guy. He is from some wealthy family. he kind of basically is a modern day eugenicist, where he wants people, especially upper class wealthy people of high IQs, to like have kids. He says it's the most important thing for high IQ wealthy people to perpetuate their genes and to continue that. So it's basically just eugenics, but 21st century edition.
Basically the antithesis of idiocracy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and pronatalism makes complete sense if you are an individual who is wealthy and doing well in life. Like, it makes sense materially that if you can provide for your kids, and not just provide for them minimal sustenance, but you could provide the happiest life that they could expect, then yeah, it makes sense to want to continue that. But it's just a little bit weird that there is this movement, and you see people like Elon Musk, who seems to subscribe to it. Like, he has like a bunch of kids with a bunch of different women, and the idea seems to be to for the elites, let's just say, the economic, social, political elites, to promote them to breed. And meanwhile, economic conditions are getting worse and worse for everyone at the bottom. So they are benefiting, and theoretically their kids will benefit, but they're promoting this message that only makes sense, only materially makes sense to them, because everyone else is doing worse economically.
Yeah, they don't
And
care.
my idea about this, the reason I'm suspicious of this, is because let's just say only the wealthy propagate. Let's just say you have a situation where anyone who is in the bottom 10%, bottom 90% of income earners just don't produce. So now you only have the top 10%, the true elites producing. Well, you need somebody to be the janitor, right? You need somebody to do all the grunt work. So if the only people around, like a generation or two or three, are people, like only people descended from very wealthy elites are around, then the people who have to do the shit work are going to be descendants of the elite.
Dude, they're not going to have anyone to steal from.
Yeah, exactly. And they won't be able to pass on that lifestyle they want to pass on to their kids. So, as they themselves are responsible for making the economic situation shittier, I feel like they're trying to low-key gaslight people in the bottom end of society to keep reproducing, because that way that ensures that their children, their children's children, still have people to exploit on the bottom. So they want to promote this whole pro-natalist message to everyone in the across social classes, because especially to the people on the bottom, because they need the people on the bottom to make sure that their kids and their grandkids can live like kings. Because if you just got rid of everyone on the bottom, then the future servants will be kids who were descended from the elites. And they want all their offsprings to do well.
Wow. Probably like the most they've ever thought about people in the lower ranks of society ever.
Which is why I think they want them to keep producing, and why they're promoting this pro-natalist message, because it's like, yeah, please have kids, don't think about it. And when you listen to the rhetoric behind it, even like on the mainstream news and stuff, like the problem of Japan's declining birth rate, it's always phrased in economic terms, like Japan needs to have more kids because they need people in the workforce to pay for the social security. Okay, if you translate that with this being said there, they're saying they need economic slaves to pay into the system. They're saying we need more kids to be economic pay piggies for the system. So the whole encouragement of pronatalism is to encourage a kind of servitude, and make sure that the servant classes, or the people who, the worker bees, keep propagating, so then they can ensure that the people above can live the luxurious lifestyle they want.
This is continuing to sound like the only time ever that people in the higher ranks of society are thinking about some kind of future beyond themselves, which is still themselves in a sense. If you look at procreation as just like the closest thing that you'll get to living an afterlife or a second life. But that doesn't really surprise me at all.
Well, I mean, it all really ties back to, if you've ever read the book Brave New World.
Yeah, I read. I got through a lot of it. I know the general idea.
You should read Brave New World, and it's the most relevant book to this conversation. Half because it's a decent book, but the other half is because who wrote it?
Aldous Huxley?
Huxley. I can never pronounce his first name, but yeah, Huxley wrote it. And Huxley was very much entrenched in these elite social circles himself. He was a British guy, and he was a socialite and an elite who was participated in these kind of conversations, and I think he participated in blatantly eugenicist conversations and stuff. So I remember reading somewhere, somebody online once said, Brave New World, the reason it's so prophetic is because it's written with somebody who had the script for the next 100 years beforehand. He just leaked the script, in a sense. But it's kind of accurate. What happens in Brave New World? They create that... the phrase I remember is the epsilon semi-morons, where they basically artificially... I mean, everyone's artificially reproduced in this society, but, like, the people on the bottom are just made to be really dumb and subservient and almost like borderline automatons, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the ideal they strive for. So, on the one hand, you could achieve that if you're on the upper end by just making economic situations so shitty that people have to be compliant and subservient, and just encourage those people to keep reproducing. Then you make sure you have a vast amount of human cattle who can, do your bidding. Mm-hmm. That's one way to get what you want as an elite, and that's the part I'm skeptical of the pro-natalist argument of encouraging everyone to have kids. Because of course, if you're on the top, you benefit from it. But why do the people whose lives are getting worse and worse, and it's looking like their kids will have even worse lives? What's the incentive for them to do it? And the incentive is to make sure that the elites have more people to exploit, basically. Now, why am I skeptical of the anti-natalist side? For the same reason, in that it also it could theoretically benefit the elites, but under a different paradigm. A lot of them are really pushing, AI technology. I think they're very utopian with their thoughts on where technology is going to go. But if you listen to what they say, they seem to genuinely believe technology, AI, and all this will solve their problems. And where I think that the anti-natalist pushing comes from, or at least that in a way that benefits them, is they don't need to worry under the other paradigm. Why we don't need to worry about maintaining an underclass of people. We would just replace them with robots and machines. So in that framework, you don't need the bottom 90% anymore, because you just replace them with robots and AI, and then you can ensure that all your kids and grandkids can live a luxurious lifestyle. It'll be fine. They won't have to compete with each other. You won't have that issue where if the only people around are the people who have wealthy grandparents, that they're just going to restart the social hierarchy, and some of them will end up on the bottom. You don't have to worry about them, because if robots and AI can do all the menial shit work, grunt work, then they can all live well, and you don't need the bottom 90%. So just have them slowly die off, and you don't need to do this in any grand kind of like putting them in concentration camps and explicitly killing them. Just have them slowly die off, generation by generation, by encouraging them not to have kids. And that's where I see both. That's why I'm skeptical of both sides, because I see under different paradigms it benefits the elite.
All right. Well, I think I've gotten the general idea of
this is very drunkenly explain. Like, I feel like I could more eloquently explain this, but I hope the gist of at least my skepticism makes sense.
And that's why it's called drunken wisdom.
Exactly.
But I mean, you were saying that people would still have kids because of the economic conditions that they're in, like they're forced to. Because what I kind
No,
of
It's encouraging them to.
Yeah.
Like, giving them kind of like social credit, like being like, oh yeah, it's a cool, basically some version of it's a cool thing to do, or it's an ethical thing to do. But you encourage them through non-economic means because they don't want to. They don't want to throw pennies at the poor, even though they're really cheap. They don't want to give anything of their own to the people in the bottom. But it's rather manipulating them through other means, like saying it's moral to have kids, or it's the right thing to do to have kids. And that way, you get them to keep producing more future slaves, future human cattle for the system, without actually having to give them anything more.
Yeah, okay,
Or you could just get rid of all of them with robots and AI. Those are basically, I think that's the real debate happening among the elite right now. We need to encourage them to everyone to have kids. Obviously, we want to have kids because things are good for us. And when things are good for you, of course you want to continue that. So, of course, we want to have kids, but we need to encourage the bottom strung to have kids so we at least have people who can do the stuff that we don't want our kids doing, so they can live luxurious lives. And then you have the other side of the debate, I think, going on among the elites, that's going, well, we don't need to worry about that because we'll just have robots and AI to take care of all the unsavory work, and so our kids can live in luxury and we don't have to support an underclass of people.
Yeah, all right. Well, you're thinking of this much more intellectually than I ever have, because one, this subject is really new to me, and I guess the other thing is I sort of relate to both sides. I'm not going to call both of them psy-ops, but your argument is actually pretty succinct. That makes total sense. Like, either they're going to all die off and robots will replace them anyway, or we need them so that they can maintain the status quo so that we're still at the top of the heap, which totally makes sense for me. At least my relationship to anti-natalism and pronatalism is I can totally understand both, and honestly, depending on the day, I might lean towards one or more, or towards the other. Because, like, there's one part of me that's like, oh, I would love to have a daughter just for myself and raise her and show her all the things that I've learned over the course of my life. It'd be great to go through all the tribulations of this existence with somebody else I care about, and then, raise another human being in the fires of this hell. And that all seems meaningful. But then there's, like, the other part of me that is looking at all this phenomenon sociologically, and the reason why, like, not only do people not want to have kids, they just don't want to get married either. And like,
an interesting thing about that is if you look at the top 10%, at least in America, like top 10% the people in that economics zone, most of them live more traditionally. They get married, they have kids, they do that. It's people, especially in the bottom 50%, where they have big issues of divorce and, out of wedlock kids and stuff like that. Now, when you get really high up, like with the billionaires, they have problems of infidelity and all this stuff. But, like, if you just look at, like, like the children of corporate lawyers, the children of doctors, if you include the whole top 10% of society, financially speaking, the ones who are at the top zone there, most of them, on average, live pretty conventionally, like 1950s standards of conventional. It's the rest of us on the bottom who've kind of suffered this postmodern mess.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm kind of curious on where you fall on that spectrum, especially because my parents, like when I was born, my dad was like in his early 20s, my mom her mid 20s, and I think my dad was working at Best Buy, and my mother, I don't even really know what the hell job that she had, but neither of them had like any money at all. They weren't living a normal life, and eventually, like 3 or 4 years after I was born, they split, and I mean, eventually my dad ended up doing a little bit better. My mom remarried, but they, just there was nothing conventional about it. And I look at my own life, I'm like, I don't really want to throw away my life at 27 for somebody else when like it just
it could just fall apart 3 years later.
well, yeah, exactly. And like then you have to put all this fucking shit into like look, and again I'm saying like it depends on the day because again I think oh wow I have a daughter, I have a son, I could teach him all of the lessons that I've learned over the course of my fucking short life. But then there's another part of me, it's like I'm broke and I'm losing my free time. That's actually one of the things that most people say is like they're losing their free time, and not to mention there's also the prawn problem I think that a lot of guys are having where like you know even if they get into a relationship with girls or even if they have the opportunity, they're just like their mind is so much into prawn mode that
this is probably a topic for another video.
Yeah.
I really don't feel like the prawn thing is as big of an issue as people make it out to be online.
I mean I don't think it's like a huge issue or anything.
Like, yes, there is some people who are absolute degenerates who it's an accomplishment if they can go 10 minutes without edging or touching themselves. But like, I feel like for most people, it's like weed or alcohol. It's like it's a vice you can moderately engage with.
So I agree. It's not as big as the internet proclaims. All I was trying to get at is I think it has to do with like convenience, and it brings down motivation to actually like get married or get into a relationship in the first place.
I think the real thing is just how unstable the economic situation is. If you could realistically expect, like for instance, like you with your parents, I imagine, like they didn't. You said your dad was working Best Buy and your mom was working something, but you know I think they had optimism. Especially they had you in the late 90s, or coming off of the late 90s. The 90s was a optimistic time. People just genuinely believed things would get better. Even if their situation now wasn't good, they had every reason to expect it to get better. It's one thing when you're working a bad job and you expect, like, you know what, like, things will get better. It's another thing when you look around you and you're like, there's no reason to expect things to get better.
No, really
I think that's the main crushing thing. It's not just an objectively bad situation of maybe you're not making enough money to afford kids, but it's the expectation that I don't see any reason why I could realistically expect that even 5-10 years down the line I'll be in a situation where I could make sure my kids have a good life.
Yeah, no,
This is where again, this is where I get a bit. This is why I go back to finger pointing to the elites, but like they're the ones who created this horrible system for the bottom 90% of people. Like they're the ones benefiting, they're the ones living more conservatively, but they've ruined the economy for everyone below.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Meanwhile, they're also some of them are trying to encourage us to have kids knowing that they expect us to have an even lower standard of living by a generation.
Yeah, they have completely fucked us over, and I didn't get to finish my point on the prawn thing. Okay,
I apologize for that.
I'm not blaming you. Okay, it's not your fault if you do. I honestly don't blame anybody. All I was saying is that regarding prawn, back in the 90s or even like the 80s, you know, if you wanted to do that, you'd have to go to some rental service and you'd be like, all right, gonna rent this thing. And go back home.
Back of the counter.
Yeah, I gotta whack it out. And then I gotta go back. And it's just like a whole process. And like I think the convenience of like, okay, well, whatever. Like even if I can't get a girlfriend, even if I can't get a date, I'm still like gonna be visually satisfied and all of this. And I think like all the conveniences like that have brought down the motivation to get into long-term relationships. That's all I was saying. Not that like I blame anybody for it. The same people you're criticizing, I think, are the ones who brought this upon all of us in the first place. And like honestly, we can criticize them till the cows come home. But what are you gonna do, man?
I'll show you what you do. You open up another drink.
Yeah.
I still have halfway of this to go, and you ride the tiger, baby. Wink, wink to people who get that reference. But yeah, you ride the tiger and you just enjoy the decline, I guess.
That's right. And keep enjoying it. And whether you're pro-natalist, anti-natalist, or don't give a fuck, as always.
Please don't give a fuck. Just ignore. It's all noise. All this online arguments, it's just noise. Live your life and don't worry what people online think.
Yeah, that's kind of why I think we're here. Is we're just two tired guys who are like, whatever.
Yep.
Internet's not worth it, man. But I still love you guys. As always, Scrutly Motley.